Hi everyone, this is Mr Neel Raithatha, also known as the Wax Whisperer. Thank you for joining me in my latest video. This is of a patient who attended with an ear infection in both of his ears, and they are a hearing aid wearer, and they noticed over the last few days they weren't hearing so well, and they arranged to visit me at the clinic. And we're just starting off in the patient's left ear. So this condition is called otitis externa. And otitis externa essentially means an ear infection of the outer ear. So the term otitis stands for ear infection, and externa is the location of the infection within the ear. So externa is an infection of the outer ear, and if there's an infection behind the eardrum in the middle ear, we call that otitis media. I've never really heard, we also have the inner ear where the organ of hearing is, the cochlea and the auditory nerve, and our vestibular system, so our balance organ, is all in the inner ear. And so I've never heard of the phrase otitis interna. I don't know if that exists, I was going to go to check, but it's normally just externa and media that we make reference to in terms of an ear infection in the ear. And there's a lot of swelling, a lot of edema of the ear canal, so you can see it's quite red and bulged, and we've cleared a lot of the debris. Now, this patient has got multiple layers of dead skin on their eardrum, and that's the tricky bit with the left ear to remove. So let's explain how the skin in the ear works and how the function of the skin. So the skin in the ear, it's called an epithelial skin. So epithelium means the outer layer of our skin. So you have the epithelium, you have the epidermis, and then you've got the dermis. And within the ear, we just have the outer skin cells. We call that the epithelial layer. So it's a very, very thin layer. And in the case of the inner 2/3 of the ear canal, that layer of skin is less than 0.1 millimeters in thickness. So it's very, very thin, very, very delicate. And the epithelial skin cells are what we call stratified. So where term stratified means in layers. So within that epithelial skin layer, there's 5 layers, I believe, in the ear. And the shape of the skin cells, they're like pancakes, so they're flattened, and they rest on top of each other. So I'm just trying to think of another way of explaining it. So think about fish scales, and you've got them stacked up on each other. That's probably the best way. And as the skin dies, the ear has evolved over millennia to expel this dead skin out of the ear. Because if it didn't, then everyone's ears would be full of dead skin. So as the skin dies and sheds, it falls, it collects within the ear canal, it forms a plug, and we all got dead skin, and we're going to have to get that clean. So unlike the skin on your hand or your scalp, as those skin cell dies, through the motion of friction and motion, they fall on the floor and they are separated from your body. So in order for our ears not to be blocked with dead skin constantly, the ears evolve. So as the skin dies and sheds, it moves sideways out of the ear, like a conveyor belt. And it all starts from the middle of the eardrum. So the eardrum is made up of 3 membranes, and the membrane that is visible to us, so we call that the lateral layer, that is made up of the same skin that lines the inner 2/3 of the ear canal. And again, the best analogy I can give in terms of the migration, the pattern of this dead skin as it dies, if imagine you have a circular pond, that's the eardrum, and then you get a pebble or stone and you drop it in the middle, you'll have a ripple effect going from the centre outwards. And in that same way, that's how the skin starts to migrate out of the ear. It all starts on the centre of the eardrum, and the skin dies and it moves radially off the eardrum, and then slowly further and further away from the eardrum until eventually it comes out of the ear. And that rate, so if you've got a piece of skin and from the eardrum, it can take on average it can migrate, should I say, 1.5 millimeters to 3 millimeters. So everyone's different per month. And if you think about the average ear canal being about 3 centimeters, so it can take around, say, 9 to 12 months for the skin from the centre of the eardrum as it dies and sheds to migrate fully out of the ear. Now, With this patient, this skin is failing to migrate off the eardrum, and instead it's kind of almost folding back upon itself. And there's actually 3 layers. Now, because the ear was infected, I wanted to avoid using drops if at all possible, but this skin is too strongly adhered. So I've just put just a minimum amount of olive oil here. And I've really managed to get the endoscope as close as possible so I can really see what I'm doing, because it is a delicate procedure this. We don't want to perforate the patient's eardrum. And I want to remove the skin because it's not going to come out by itself and you're going to get another layer. So this oil will just help soften it. And I believe you're going to say there are 2 dead skin layers here. So this is the first one that I'm removing. And I'm just in the anterior recess. I'm just using a fine end suction probe. And it's just attached itself to the bottom part of the eardrum, the inferior recess. I'm just going to dislodge it. I'm trying to just wriggle it. So what's happened here, as the skin is dying and shedding off the eardrum, it's almost folding back upon itself and then reattaching itself to the eardrum. You can see that it's a lot bigger piece of skin than I initially believed it would be. And as I was removing this, I thought this is the entire piece of skin. I was quite pleased. I thought we removed it in its entirety. But when I look back in, you can see you've still got another layer there. So I still want to try and remove that if at all possible. So again, I'm going back in and I'm just trying to find an area of this dead skin. And you can see just at the center, there's that edge of the dead skin. You can see how it's just folded upon itself. So the skin's dying off the eardrum. Instead of coming away from the eardrum completely and attaching itself to the ear canal and then eventually coming out of the ear, it's just folding upon itself. Almost like if you have a lasagna sheet that's softened and you lay it and you fold it upon itself again. Or if you're icing a cake and you're kind of making folds on top of it, on top of the previous layer. That's how it's going on with the skin here. So I managed to remove that off the eardrum. You can see they've got a brand new eardrum now. It's completely visible. Just going to go back in and just mop up around the edge now. We've written to the patient's GP to have some antibiotics and ear spray hopefully prescribed. I've advised them to avoid wearing their hearing aid during that time. Now that's easier said than done because the patient's really hard of hearing and they rely on their hearing. It's important, of course, it's important for all of us. So that's the official advice we have to give because we want this infection to heal itself and to resolve itself. And the best way for the infection to resolve itself is 1, keep the ear dry, and 2, allow natural air to aerate and ventilate the ear. And a hearing aid is going to somewhat prevent that. But of course, if the patient really needs to wear the hearing aid, we've asked them to wear them. They have got 2 hearing aids, so we've advised them to alternate between the 2 to give each ear a good rest. And of course, when they apply the drops, just don't put the hearing aid in immediately. And this is if, in the worst case scenario, that they really do need to wear it. So just some dead skin at the entrance here. Again, it's just not migrating out of the ear. And you can probably have an appreciation of how swollen and inflamed the ear canal is. It's very bulged inside and spongy. And it's just near the entrance, you can see all the cilia. So this is probably the more complex one out of the 2, purely because we have to work on the eardrum. Whenever we work on the eardrum, it becomes a bit more complex because that's the most delicate part of the ear, really. If you perforate that ear, that's the last thing anyone wants to do, so we're going to be extra cautious. So again, it's just a bit more skin at the entrance. You just want to just attach. This is a bit more crusted, this skin. And it's also matted itself against the hairs. And you can just see, just near the entrance, at the floor of the ear canal, there's a little basin here. So I just want to, I think I'm standing up at this point and I'm just angling the endoscope downwards into this pit area, because you have some skin forming here. And I'm just gliding the fine end over. Obviously we don't want to graze the ear canal, so we're going to get as much out as we can without causing any discomfort and pain to the patient. And I think we're more or less about there. So a final look at the eardrum, which we couldn't see before. So this is the patient's right ear. Once more, they've got otitis externa, a lot of dead skin. You can see this layer of skin here on the right hand side of the ear canal, the anterior canal wall. So this is a fresher layer of skin that's died and shedded, but it's failed to migrate out of the ear. And eventually this layer will get compressed deeper and deeper into the core of the plug as you have more and more skin dying and shedding on the canal wall. So it's very sticky and wet on this side. Not much space to work with because it's a lot of edema and swelling. And it's just blocked the tube there. And once more, I want to avoid using any drops if at all possible. Whenever the ear is infected like this, I prefer to avoid drops wherever possible. On the left side, we really had little option with the final bit on the eardrum. And again, I didn't overuse the drops. I just put enough just to soften and settle on the eardrum. And that's because when you've got an infection, you want to keep the ear dry as possible. You don't want any moisture in there. But so far, we're fine with this ear. You can see it really narrows deep in the ear. I can just about fit the Zollner suction probe in. So this is the diameter of the Zollner suction probe is 2.2 millimeters. And we can just about fit it into the ear. So see the eardrum already. So in terms of their hearing much better. And I just want to spend a bit of time now just trying to suction this dead wilted skin. We're not going to get every last speck, it's just not possible, but I want to get as much out as I can, as comfortably as I can for the patient. And I'm going to revert to a fine end suction probe now, I believe. So we're just at the roof of the ear canal, and I'm just peeling this downwards. Just at the front part of the ear, and on the bony part, so this is the sensitive part, we're going to be really careful. We don't want to come in contact with that part of the ear canal, just hovering over, because that will be uncomfortable for the patient. And you can see we're just gliding this fine end over the top, slowly and away from the bone itself, just lifting it, always working away from the canal, so we're not making direct contact, and we're minimising the risk of causing trauma. And here, just right to left, just little fine motor movements. Just going back to the roof here, you got some more dead skin. So I'd say the right is a lot more inflamed and swollen than the left, but there was no dead skin on the patient's right eardrum, and upon attending, they did advise that they felt the left ear was the worst of the two, and even after I moved the majority of the wax and dead skin from the left ear, with those 2 layers of dead skin on the eardrum, they did feel that it was still slightly blocked their left ear. But upon removing those 2 layers of skin, they could hear significantly better now. We're just going to be really careful because we're really close to the eardrum. We don't want to perforate it. So I've got as much skin out as I feel I can, comfortably as possible in that region. So just coming away on the posterior canal wall, and I'm just gliding over this. That was more on the cartilaginous portion, so we can put a bit of pressure there. It's not going to be uncomfortable for the patient. And we're back now near the entrance, and again, just peeling away, trying to get some excess skin off. So this is the cartilaginous portion here. We can put a bit more pressure on there because it's not going to be uncomfortable for the patient. Even with the ear being tender and swollen, they're tolerating the procedure very well indeed. So at this moment, right near the entrance, and this is on the back part of the ear canal, you can see the eardrum to the right. See how much cleaner the ear is. So just at the base of the ear canal is another layer of skin. We're just trying to peel this away. So we've given this ear the best opportunity, I feel now, for the antibiotic spray to do it work its magic. We are seeing a high influx of ear infections at the moment in the clinic. It's that time of year, increased heat, humidity, people are entering the water a lot more whilst on holiday or even at home in a swimming pool, jacuzzis. And I would say, I do treat a lot of ear infections, but I would say it's easily doubled in volume in the last couple of weeks. So, guys, do keep your ears dry. Try to avoid water in your ears so you can get plugs, and just keep them water free. I hope you enjoyed that video and you're all keeping well and safe. Speak soon, take care, and remember, be nice and be kind.